Welcome back, everyone. Today, I want to ask you a question that likely keeps you awake when the rest of the world is sleeping. Have you ever wondered what actually happens behind the scenes when you finally decide to stop the noise, stop the reaching, and choose to simply disappear? Most people think that by ignoring a situation, they are becoming nothing. But in the world of human psychology, your absence isn't an empty space. In reality, it's a quiet, heavy truth that speaks for itself. We've all been there. You're navigating the wreckage of a complicated relationship. It was painful, it was confusing, and now it's over. But as you're trying to catch your breath, you see it. Them. Moving on at lightning speed. Maybe there's a new face in their photos. A perfect new relationship paraded for the world to see. And as you sit in your quiet room, you start to wonder, does my silence even make a dent? Have they forgotten I ever existed? It's easy to look at their highlight reel and feel replaceable. But human psychology is rarely as simple as a social media post. Here's the truth they won't tell you. When you deal with someone who has spent their life thriving on constant validation, someone who needs the high of an emotional reaction to feel alive, your sudden absence creates a massive, echoing void. It is so natural to want to reach out. You want to defend yourself. You want to show them that you're doing better than the person they replaced you with. But what if I told you that doing absolutely nothing, offering zero response to their provocations, is actually the most powerful statement you could ever make? Think back to the cycle you lived in, the push and the pull, the predictable pattern of highs and lows. In that dynamic, your emotions were the fuel. Whether you were crying or cheering, your reactions were the heartbeat that kept that cycle alive. You had a role to play. But the moment you step out of the arena, the moment you stop reacting, the script breaks. By refusing to play the part they assigned you, you disrupt their sense of control. You aren't just leaving a relationship, you are withdrawing the energy they rely on to feel secure. From the outside, the new chapter looks like a victory. It looks shiny, new, and untouchable. It's designed to make you feel insignificant. But we have to look past the curated photos. We have to look beneath the public displays of affection to see the gears turning underneath. Your silence is not just an absence of words. It is an active, heavy presence. It is a mirror that forces them to look at themselves without your reaction to distract them. So, what is actually happening in their mind when you refuse to play the game? Let's dive deep into the psychology of attention and why the reality of your silence is much more haunting than you've ever imagined. So, what is genuinely happening in that complex space of their mind when you completely refuse to participate in the drama? When you ignore the subtle jealousy games, the accidental updates, and the orchestrated chaos? To understand this, we have to look at the hidden patterns of human connection. We have to look at how absence and attention interact, especially when a person's entire world is built on the need for external validation. Prepare yourself, because the reality of how your silence impacts them is likely very different from the stories you've been telling yourself late at night. Let's start with a concept that changes everything. Attention is a psychological currency. For some, attention isn't just a nice to have. It is a vital necessity. It's how they regulate a fragile sense of self. Without it, their sense of self begins to flicker. When you were together, they grew accustomed to cashing in on your reactions whenever they felt insecure. But when you withdraw that attention completely and suddenly, you are cutting off a vital revenue stream. You aren't just being quiet, you are removing the very thing they use to feel real. You might think, but they have someone new. Surely that's enough validation for them. And on the surface, it is. The honeymoon phase is a massive high. It's loud, it's bright, and it's easy. But therein lies the paradox. Validation from a brand new partner is unquestioning. It's given freely. And because it's so easy to get, it eventually starts to lose its value. But your attention, the attention they cannot have, suddenly that becomes the most intriguing puzzle in the room. And over time, your silence becomes a quiet, persistent thought they can't quite shake, simply because they can no longer reach you. There is a fascinating principle in psychology called the Zeigarnik effect. It suggests that the human brain remembers an uncompleted task far more vividly than one that is finished. By choosing to ignore them, you are leaving a massive emotional loop wide open. They expected a finale. They expected your anger, your tears, or your desperate pleas for closure. They had a satisfying ending written in their head where they were the hero, or even the villain, but always the center of the story. Instead, you gave them a blank page. You left them with the uncomfortable weight of unfinished business. The contrast is what makes it so unsettling. While their new partner may be showering them with praise, your unwavering indifference creates a silence that is almost deafening. It forces a question into their mind that they can't shake. Why aren't they reacting like the others did? Why do they seem so unbothered? In the end, it's not your anger that challenges them. Anger is still a form of connection. It's your indifference that changes the game. It proves that their perfect new life hasn't shattered yours, and that is a realization they never saw coming. In many of these stories, something profound happens when you choose to stay silent. You see, most people in these dynamics construct a very specific mental framework, a world where they are the sun and everyone else is a planet caught in their gravitational pull. They expect you to orbit them forever, to react, to cry, to watch from a distance. But when you suddenly stop orbiting, when you disappear into your own distant galaxy, it threatens the very foundation of their worldview. Your silence isn't just a lack of words, it's a declaration that you are no longer a satellite in their sky. It's important to recognize that your silence can trigger a deep sense of internal bruising for them, even if they are busy with someone new. This happens because their sense of worth is often built on being unforgettable. They need to believe they are irreplaceable. By genuinely not caring, by showing a complete lack of interest in their updates or their new life, you are indirectly sending a message that is harder to hear than any insult. You are showing them that life goes on, that they are not the center of your universe. And for someone who needs to be seen to feel real, that realization is a quiet, heavy blow. Now, this tension doesn't usually show up right away. In the beginning, the newness of their situation acts as a shield. It's a loud, bright distraction. But novelty is a finite resource. Eventually, the routine sets in, the excitement fades, and in that quiet space of the everyday, the echoing sound of your silence starts to grow louder. They begin to compare. They compare the predictable adoration of their new partner to the mysterious, impenetrable wall of your indifference. The person they have is easy. The person they lost is the one they can no longer reach. You see, those who live for validation are highly tuned to the emotional temperature of the people around them. They are masters at pushing buttons. They know exactly which switch to flip to trigger a reaction, exactly which move will make you react. They press the button. They wait for the spark. But this time, the wires have been disconnected. When those familiar buttons no longer work, it creates a profound sense of powerlessness. And when the reaction never comes, They often don't know what to do with that silence. Ultimately, your withdrawal removes the very friction they often use to create excitement in their lives. Without you playing the role of the heartbroken ex or the jealous rival, the drama disappears. They are left alone with their new partner, without the dramatic backdrop they usually rely on to feel alive. The new relationship suddenly feels mundane. It feels ordinary. By stepping off the stage, you've ended the play, and now they are forced to confront the reality of their choices without any audience left to watch. The true power of absence lies in the unknown. As human beings, we are naturally uncomfortable with what we cannot predict. We want answers. We want to know what's happening behind the curtain. When you stay silent, you aren't just being quiet. You are creating an empty space that their mind desperately tries to fill. And because they can no longer read your mind, they are forced to do something very uncomfortable. They have to project their own insecurities and doubts onto that empty space. Your silence doesn't tell them you're hurting, it tells them nothing. And for them, nothing is far more terrifying than 1,000 angry words. Now that we understand the mechanics, let's look at the pattern. In the beginning, usually those first few weeks of your silence, you'll notice a doubling down. They may suddenly become incredibly loud about their happiness. This is the performative phase. Expect to see the perfect photos, the picture-perfect dates, and the exaggerated displays of affection. A lot of those displays aren't really about their happiness. They are a performance for an invisible audience, a way of trying to feel seen, especially by you. They are visiting the places you used to go, posting the things you used to love, waiting for you to look. Every post, every update, and every public display is like an invisible fishing line cast into the dark. They are waiting for the slightest tug, a like on a photo, a text message, a mention from a mutual friend. Anything that proves you are still emotionally invested in their romantic choices. They need to know that you are watching from the shadows, secretly agonizing over every detail. But when those lines remain completely still, when days turn into weeks and you offer nothing but a calm, steady quiet, that is when the shift happens. As more time passes, the loud happiness starts to look a bit forced. The impatience begins to set in. You might start to hear whispers through the grapevine. Maybe they casually brought up your name in a conversation with a friend. Maybe they're asking questions, trying to gauge where you are and what you're doing. They are desperately trying to gather information. They want to know, is this silence a tactic, or have they actually, truly moved on? The uncertainty is what eats away at the facade. It is often during this middle phase that the new relationship begins to feel the weight of your absence. The person you are ignoring may become irritable or critical of their new partner. Why? Because the unresolved tension from your silence is bleeding into their current reality. The new partner, who was initially put on a pedestal, suddenly finds themselves failing to measure up to an invisible standard. Not because they aren't enough, but because they aren't you. By removing yourself, you haven't just protected your peace, you forced them to face the reality of their choices without the distraction of your reaction. As more time passes and your boundary remains firm and unyielding, you may experience something that feels like a sudden glitch in the silence. It's often called a hoovering attempt, a low-effort, low-risk test to see if the door to your attention is still ajar. It might be a random text asking a mundane question, or a sudden like on an old photo from years ago. It feels innocent, but it's rarely about a genuine desire to reconnect. It's a probe. They are simply checking to see if they still have the power to make you look back. If you choose to maintain your stance, if you continue to offer them nothing, the behavior often takes a more dramatic turn. When the subtle tests fail, the volume goes up. They might suddenly manufacture a crisis that only you can help with. Or they might offer an apology that sounds beautiful but lacks any real accountability. Even a negative reaction from you, even your anger, is a win in their eyes. To them, negative attention is still a form of connection. It feels safer to them than the terrifying emptiness of your unwavering indifference. When these desperate attempts also fail to produce a reaction, a fascinating pivot happens within their internal narrative. To protect their fragile sense of self from the reality of your rejection, they will likely begin to rewrite your entire history. In their mind, and in the stories they tell others, you may suddenly become the villain. They might tell anyone who will listen that you are bitter, cold, or unable to communicate. They may even convince their new partner that you are the one who couldn't let go. It is so important to anticipate this villain arc. This rewriting of the story is a classic defense mechanism, a way for them to regain a sense of control over a narrative that has slipped through their fingers. You might feel a deep urge to step in, to defend your reputation, or to correct the lies. But I want you to remember, engaging at this point only hands them exactly what they've been searching for. It restarts the cycle. By staying silent, you aren't agreeing with their story. You are simply refusing to be a character in their play anymore. Eventually, the pattern reaches a plateau. They are forced to accept, at least on the surface, that they no longer have access to your emotional energy. They will likely refocus all their intensity back onto the new supply, or perhaps start the cycle again with someone else if that current relationship begins to crumble. Your absence has fundamentally changed the power dynamic. By refusing to react, you have left them to face their own internal world, while you have moved on to build a world of your own. But here is the most important part of our journey today. This is the profound twist that makes this entire process so transformative for your life. We've spent time analyzing their mind, their patterns, and the impact on their new relationship. But in the grand design of your healing, none of that truly matters. The real psychological shift isn't about depriving them of attention. It's about reclaiming your energy and redirecting every single drop of it back into yourself. Think back to the first day you chose silence. It was likely a strategic move, a painful exercise in self-restraint designed to protect your heart or send a message. You were probably still thinking about them constantly, wondering if they noticed, wondering if they cared. But as the days and weeks turn into months, something beautiful and unexpected begins to happen inside your mind. A psychological rewiring takes place. The silence stops being a tactic and it starts becoming your peace. The mental space that was once crowded by their chaos, their actions, their new partner, their possible reactions, is suddenly free. And you start to fill that space with your own growth. Eventually, you reach a stage where you aren't ignoring them anymore. You simply don't see them. They are no longer relevant to the fulfilling life you are building. The beautiful irony of this journey is that the ultimate statement naturally transforms into genuine indifference. You eventually reach a point where you honestly do not care whether their new relationship is perfect or a disaster. You realize that your absence was never actually a weapon meant to hurt them. It was a protective shield. It was the space you needed to heal, to rediscover your value, and to remember who you are without them. By removing yourself from their story, you have finally given yourself permission to be the central character in your own. I truly hope this exploration into the quiet power of absence has given you the clarity and the validation you needed today. If this perspective helped you feel a little lighter, please consider sharing your own experience in the comments below. Your words might be the exact encouragement someone else needs to hear in their darkest hour. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so we can continue navigating these complex emotional waters together. Stay strong, stay silent in your peace, and I will see you in the next discussion.